All right, so today we're going to get under the hood of a 16th century text that, believe it or not, has had a huge impact on our world. I'm talking about laws, ethics, even the way millions of us think about what a good life even is, often without us even knowing it. We're going to unpack John Calvin's Institutes and really try to understand his blueprint for life.
I mean, what does it mean to live a good life? It's one of those massive questions, right? It's echoed through all of human history. You've got philosophers, theologians, pretty much every thinker from every generation trying to crack that code. What's the right way to go about living? What are we even supposed to be aiming for?
Well, one of the most, let's say, detailed answers comes from this guy, the theologian John Calvin. And while his massive book, The Institutes, is famous for being, super dense theology, a huge chunk of it is actually surprisingly practical. It's like a detailed pattern for how to order your entire life day in and day out.
Okay, so where does Calvin even begin with this thing? He kicks it off by tackling a really fundamental question. Once a person's life gets, spiritually turned around, what's the plan then? What's next? For Calvin, ground zero for this new life is something he calls regeneration. Think of it as this foundational, spiritual transformation that basically points a person's entire life in a new direction, away from just themselves and toward God. So his whole blueprint, it's really designed for someone who's already taken that first big step.
And it's really important to get this. For Calvin, this blueprint isn't something he just cooked up. He straight up says his goal is to pull together a pattern directly from Scripture. He basically saw all these people with this genuine, heartfelt desire, this zeal, and he wanted to give them a reliable map so they wouldn't get lost.
And this is where you see a huge split between his approach and, say, classical philosophy. He argues that philosophers, they built their ethics on human reason and our own inner virtue, what he calls the natural dignity of man. But Calvin, he grounds his entire system somewhere else. He calls it Scripture's most beautiful dispensation, which is just a fancy way of saying its divine plan, how God ordered things. The source of authority is just completely different.
Okay, so if that's the blueprint, what's the engine? What's the gas in the tank that actually makes a person want to follow this pattern? Well, Calvin says there are these two really powerful motivations, and they're totally tangled up with each other. First up, the number one motivation is the very nature of God himself. See, for Calvin, the standard for how we should live isn't some vague, abstract idea of being good. No, it's the solid, real-as-anything character of God. So the goal, then, is to reflect the one you're now in a relationship with. Simple as that. And the logic here is pretty simple, but it's also really deep. To have a real connection, a real fellowship with a God who is holy, there has to be a shared bond of holiness. I mean, you can't really be in communion with something you have absolutely zero in common with, right? It's all about becoming fit for that relationship. And that idea flows right into the second motivation, which is maybe even more direct. The standard isn't just this idea of holiness floating out there, it's a person, it's Christ. His life is put forward as the ultimate, tangible, fleshed-out example, the pattern we're supposed to express in our own lives. And this is where Calvin's whole framing of the why becomes so powerful. He completely flips the script. You don't live this way to earn all this stuff. He argues you live this way because this stuff is already true about you. You've already been cleansed. You're already part of his body. You've been dedicated as a temple. Your destiny is already set with this unfading crown. So all those realities, that's the deep internal engine that motivates you to line your life up with the pattern. Okay, this brings us to a really, really crucial point. Calvin is adamant that this whole blueprint is not just about checking boxes or developing good habits on the outside. No, it's about something way, way deeper.
He makes this super sharp distinction between what he calls a doctrine of the tongue and a doctrine of life. Think about it. Anybody can learn some facts and give lip service to ideas, right? But for Calvin, the real deal, the doctrine of life, has to take over your whole soul. It has to set up shop deep in your heart and change you from the inside out.
And man, you can really feel the passion in this quote, can't you? He's basically saying this transformation should be 100 times more powerful than what he calls the cold exhortations of the philosophers. This isn't some boring intellectual exercise. He's talking about a deep, life-altering, totally all-consuming change.
Now, you might be listening to all this, reflecting a holy God, expressing the pattern of Christ, and thinking, wow, that sounds impossible, like an insanely high standard. And you know what? Calvin was keenly aware of that.
He totally gets it, and he tackles the very human reality of messing up and falling short head on.
Yeah, he was a total realist. He even calls our current existence an earthly prison of the body. And he says flat out that while we're in this state, nobody is going to reach perfection. It's just not going to happen. So that leads to the obvious question, right? Why even bother trying?
Because for him, the point isn't perfection, it's progress. He lays out this really practical daily game plan. You keep the big goal in sight, for sure, but you just move toward it at your own pace. Even if, as he says, you're just creeping along the ground. The absolute key is not to give up when you feel weak, but to lock in on one simple idea. Just try to make today a little bit better than yesterday.
And he sums up the whole idea so beautifully here. As long as today outstrips yesterday, the effort wasn't wasted. It's never lost. As long as there's forward motion, no matter how tiny, it counts. I mean, that's a deeply kind and encouraging thought for anyone who's ever tried to live up to a high standard, isn't it?
So that kind of leaves us with a final question to chew on. In our world today, right, which is just flooded with impossible ideals and highlight reels on social media, how important is this 500-year-old idea? This simple, quiet focus on just making progress, not hitting perfection? It's definitely something to think about.